Ladies and gentlemen, sit back and enjoy because we're entering Suburbia. That's right, we are going to talk about the George Clooney movie Suburbicon here on Anatomy of Movies, so stay tuned.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk, we talk movies. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Anatomy of a Movie.
Interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Marisa Serafini.
Hello, everyone.
We have Demetri Panos.
Hey, movie fans, how are you? How's everybody doing today? We got the group back.
Yeah, we're back.
That's right. And I'm Phil Svitek. We're talking Suburbicon starring Matt Damon, written by the Coen brothers. As always, first off, understand that this is going to be spoiler-filled, so if you're joining us for the very first time, if you haven't seen the movie, that's okay. As long as you know, we're going to ruin it for you. Perhaps more ways than one. And also, you can get our rundown in the description box. There's a link to it, so that way, for all the little tidbits and nuggets that we have to pull and discuss, they're there, because we don't always get to them, but, it's certainly up for discussion. Anyway, as we always do, let's start with overall impressions, starting with Marisa.
I thought this movie was interesting. Admittedly, it was not my favorite movie this year. I think the trailers was very misleading. I went into this film expecting it to be like a kind of a darker comedy, but more of a comedic type of role or type of film. Because I know the Coen brothers, they tend to be quirky and there's an air of comedy to it. So I went in with that mentality. And then watching it, it was so not that type of film. And it's not to say I was let down, but I was more misled. Mm-hmm. And then that changed my feelings of how I thought I was going to like this film and then ended up really not liking this film. I think the timing of this film is very pertinent to today's society and community. They're very hard-hitting issues, but I don't think this is the best film to be released at this time of year. I think the acting in this film was great, but the storyline I just could not get on board with.
Demetri?
Well, I think to be clear, this wasn't necessarily written by the Coen brothers. This is based off of a script that the Coen brothers had, that George Clooney and his longtime collaborator, Grant Heslov, sort of kind of rewrote, rejiggered. We're going to go through the whole history of this, but it was a Coen brothers script, which was unproduced. They took it, they sort of kind of rewrote it, and hence now we have Suburbicon, which I don't necessarily disagree with what you were saying, Marisa, regarding the trailers, but for me, this movie was just an utter mess. It tried to mash up racial tension along with suburban strife, discord, and this undercurrent. It tried to be noirish, but there was very little noir. There was no focus, and it wanted to be like Double Indemnity, but then it throws in this racial thing, which really had no place in this story other than to cover up for the fact of our Lodge family, and it showed that there are very fine people who aren't very fine people, which we already are aware of, and I really thought that it was going to subvert this whole suburban 50s kind of thing, which would have been great had they had focus and had they had characters that I could sort of kind of like and follow. But being that this movie, to me anyways, there was no clear view as to who this movie's point of view was. The African-American family that moves in, we know so little about them other than the color of their skin. We don't know why they moved there, why they chose to do what they do, who they are. We never got to meet them, really. From the Matt Damon camp, am I watching this movie from his perspective? Am I watching it from his son's perspective? Like, whose story is this? It was just, to me, such a mess of a movie, and for me, the cardinal sin, there was barely a character that was likable for me to follow, that I cared about. There was such mean-spiritedness that I get it in a dark comedy, like the Coen brothers do so well. Like Fargo is a really great movie that has characters that you don't like, but there's somebody that you follow through that you do like usually. And when they're so mean and horrible, I just didn't care. And even the son at the end of the movie, he's just like, I'm going to go out and play ball. I'm going to go play catch. After all this horrible stuff that just went on. Yeah, the movie, it lacks such focus that it was just too bad, because the opening 5 minutes I thought was great, how it set everything up of Suburbicon. But, in the end, if they had more focus, maybe a likable character, Clooney and Henslov may have had their Fargo, but they were too far to go before you got to that.
I thought, for me, it wasn't the greatest movie, but it actually wasn't that bad. And I think people are missing a certain point of it, or they just don't get the humor that is there and ultimately what it's trying to say. The fact that, to me, at the end, the kid can go back to just playing baseball, I think says just basically how at the end of the day, we can, as white people, we can just write off all the bad negativity of our past and just be like, okay, great, time to move on. Or it also there's a duality to it where it's like, at the end of the day, it's the innocence of a kid and they have the ability to forget, which is what the adults conversely do not have. And they don't even have a reason to hate. They just hate because of the color of someone's skin.
Yeah, but that had nothing to do with the main story. What's the main story? That had nothing to do with the main story.
I don't understand.
The racist part of it had nothing to do with what was going on in the movie.
Yeah,
well, that's what I don't understand. Like, the whole point was, while everyone is focused on a black family in the neighborhood, look at what's happening over here. We got killers and murderers left and right, but no one seems to notice because they're too worried that, God forbid, there's a black family in the goddamn neighborhood. That's the point of the story.
Yeah, to me, that connection was not clear at all. Yeah, not clear at all. It was because we didn't even.
I don't think it needed that. I thought it was right there.
Yeah,
it was clear as day.
Yeah, I didn't. There were two stories that were so not even connected, and a facade of what?
I was waiting for it to intersect at some point. I mean,
right.
I understand that now, knowing that there was a lot of racism, it established the fact that we're back in the 1950s, and this is a time where segregation is not really welcomed yet. And I get that mentality that they set up for us, but I was just waiting they were two completely different stories that never actually met up somewhere in the middle. And I didn't like that because we kept going back and forth between this family and all the riots to the white family that we're focusing on with murders. And I'm like, how do they even correlate with each other? And they don't. And I
think you guys are just used to such Western bullshit fucking writing that you because it's clear as fucking day.
If you say
clear as fucking day, they don't need to intersect for me to understand the point.
Oh, I get the point.
So then, what's the problem?
I get the point, but I'm just upset that it never happened.
Nothing happened.
Nothing happened.
Just because, and again, had I known that family that moved in, I mean, it's basically, okay, I get it. The color of their skin, everybody's racist. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, that's the point.
Okay, but it had nothing to do with that's not the real story. If anything, that's a red herring. It has nothing to do with the real story, and the real story is about the Matt Damon family MacGuffin. Doing the double indemnity, which that in fact wasn't even. If you read certain reviews or if you read certain plot things, that's not even clear that they were trying to kill the wife, because I've read many things that say he was into the mob for a ton of money, and had he not paid it, somebody in his family was going to die, which happened to be the wife, and then this whole insurance thing comes up, and I'm like, well, wait, this is a double indemnity thing. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. If you can't make your main story clear in what it has, with what the distraction is that's going on, who cares that this family is like, if that's your story, who cares that this family's next door? I want to like see how this family's going to deal with this racial injustice that's taking place, which which is horrible. But then I've got this family over here that like it's supposed to be the root of evil in suburbia, but nobody cares. And the people were ended up being so mean-spirited too, that again, the closest I can compare this to is sort of kind of like Fargo. I can go to Double Indemnity, but Double Indemnity is such a great movie and is really true film noir that had a sexiness about it, that characters that I cared about. This movie I didn't care about like anybody except for maybe.
I cared about the
Isaac.
kid.
Oh, I cared about him
He was
too.
like, and maybe the uncle, because he was sort of likable. But those were the only two, and they weren't the main characters either.
Were they not? I mean, that's my point. Who were the main characters?
I think the point that you have, these are absolute caricatures, and they're not fully representative of anyone in particular within society, but it is somewhat of a mirror of like, okay, Like, I know plenty of people that could fit these various descriptions, and it's not that far-fetched to, like in different circumstances, like you could see some of this happening. I mean, not verbatim, but that's the point. It's blanketed to kind of encompass just absurdity and a mob mentality of it all. Of one thing begets another, and then all of a sudden it blows up into this bigger thing. As far as Matt Damon's thing, I mean. I think
whose movie is are we seeing this through? Who's the main character of this movie?
I don't need a main character all the time.
But you sort of kind of do.
No, because again, like here's the thing: there's plenty of like Eastern movies that don't have a main character. So I don't know. Again, I think you guys are stuck on certain cliches that you guys can't.
It's not a cliche. Like
yeah, it is.
How so? Fargo is a cliche.
No, I'm not saying no, but yes, there is story structure and there is ways to quote tell stories that becomes your structure. And then if God forbid you don't become beholden to that, then your stories are meant. But no, it doesn't have to be that way.
I understand your point,
I get
but it
that.
needed it here. It did. It needed it here. I needed to know, like, who am I supposed to be rooting for in this? Like, I don't want any harm to come to the kid. Right? I don't want any harm to come to the black family, but I really don't know the black family because they have nothing to do with what's supposedly my main story. So the racial injustice taking place seemed very tacked on, which it was, because it wasn't in the Coen brothers script. So it was tacked on, and it felt tacked on. It just didn't mix well. The mashup didn't work for me.
Two things kind of happened for me. A, going into this movie, I felt like, based on the promotion, it made Matt Damon's character seem like he was just sort of reacting. It felt like, like a Taken type of situation where he didn't, it just kind of happened and he didn't have control over it. When Fate, and he actually did. The second thing, like, it's Margaret who tells the kid to go play with, so you kind of take that as, oh, they're not racist at all. And it's like, you know what? Whether or not they are, that's fine. What they are is much, much worse.
Is it worse, though? I mean...
I guess 6 of one, half a dozen the other. Like, you're the townies being racist, or you're killing your wife and everyone else.
But you also brought up Marissa's point, too, regarding the trailer and the marketing, because I felt that the Matt Damon character was... Because they promoted Coen brothers, he sort of kind of reminded me of the William H. Macy. You knew that something was going on, and he couldn't protect his family, and so I sort of kind of was expecting that kind of tone more, and that where maybe I would feel like sometimes in a movie a character will put themselves in a situation, like, albeit like whether it's a gambling debt, but you can feel sort of bad for them because now they put themselves in this horrible situation. They did it to themselves, and now it's impacting their family. You can still, great, it's not the best thing, it's a character flaw, but you can still sort of go for that character. But here you just couldn't. Once you find out what's going on, you really couldn't root for that character at all.
No, and I mean, like, and Matt Damon has a well-established career. You're going to automatically think he's the male protagonist of the film. It's like you just go and you're like, I'm gonna see this for Matt Damon. But while you're watching it and you see more focus on the kid, we start with the kid and then we end with the kid. Mm-hmm. So I think he's more the main protagonist than Gardner was. But what was frustrating is that the way that Gardner turned out to be, as not of a likable character, and what we had to go through. I think the trailer gave away too much of this film.
Did you?
I found this film very predictable at the end. I don't know about you guys, but I found like storylines. I thought in my head, this is exactly how it's going to pan out, and it happened. So I think I was also let down by that I could predict it.
I didn't necessarily mind the prediction as far as the dad. And maybe you guys are blessed enough.
Gardner Lodge, okay.
Yes. Maybe you guys are blessed enough that you guys have wonderful fathers, but I know plenty of people whose dads were, like, you're supposed to love your father,
right.
And yet, there's plenty of people I know that have been beaten by their dads and, like, had, terrible relationships with the dad. So, for me, it wasn't that far-fetched. I mean, this took it to to the ultimate extreme, but, like, I've seen plenty of...
No, listen... Movies have addressed that in for a long time. I mean, hell, earlier this year wasn't Fences this year.
Fences was last year,
was
but yes.
Last year? Okay. I mean, there've been plenty of movies. That topic has been dealt in almost every John Hughes movie. The thing is that this dad was literally going to kill his son. Literally, like what he said to his son, and it was because of the way it was delivered and performed. I mean, this is the meanest I've seen Matt
how
Damon.
He was going to kill his son.
Yeah, and he was like telling him, "Son, you're a liability, and you're going to get killed like this, and I'm going to go to Aruba, and unless you can do this." But I believed and again, it's through Matt Damon's performance. And here's the thing: the performances in the movie were fine, and again, I can't fault Clooney's direction. He got good performances from his actors, I think, particularly the kid. And
nothing was wrong with the acting.
Right.
It was the storyline and how they didn't intersect and how they were it was very convoluted.
It didn't make sense. And if you're going to be a satire, you got to pick, okay, what am I satirizing? Am I satirizing race relations? Am I satirizing living in suburbia? Where's this undercurrent? Because is the undercurrent that I don't see what's going on over here, and that there's racism, which still exists today? And it's very interesting because that aspect of the story, upon research, the racial part of the story is actually based off of a true event that happened, that Clooney and Henslov wrote about to throw it into this movie. If you took that component out of the movie and you just crafted the subversion of living in a perfect society, a paradise, so to speak, and you have this evilness, and then you have either your insurance person who's the quote-unquote detective, or you have the cop who's trying to figure it out. Well, maybe they felt that was too close to being Fargo, but at that point I'd be like, well, go ahead, mimic a much better movie, but make sense about it. That's all. And the marketing, I think, was, to your point, I think it was done purposely to really try to make this movie. That was the only way to get people to
watch this film.
I think so, because how do you put all those themes into a trailer and make it so that people want to go?
Right, like no one's going to go to a movie to watch racism. No one's going to go to a movie to watch a boring life in suburbia.
Yeah, it's tough because remember when Detroit
not marketable whatsoever
came out, but Life in Suburbia is easily parodied, I think, and to make satire, especially in the 50s. It's you could have.
Watch Leave It to Beaver then.
But that's not that was back then. That was suburbia, but I love the Leave It to Beaver lifestyle that they set up. Mm-hmm. And I just wish that let's focus on a story and let's get that story right, and let's have fun with that 50s feel. Let's make let's really make fun of it, not just because of the time, but because of the A-OK-ness of it all when things really aren't A-OK. And then, bring that up from the bottom. Like, that's noir. When there's that undercurrent of evil and that shadow of evil, this was more in your face. I mean, we know that racism is bad. But I want to know that family, like Jesus Christ, like they shouldn't have had to endure that. How are they going to, like, what's going to go on with them? Like, I wanted to follow them, but then we cut back to this where I didn't want to follow those people.
I think that's also the letdown to the family, the neighbor family that we see, is that there was really no resolution to them either. We see all the unfortunate riots, but then days, we can believe weeks have passed, and then they're fine. We're like, that's it? There was no, like, follow-up to what happened?
Are they still racist in Suburbicon?
Yeah, it's like, I feel like...
They are, but they gave up.
It literally fizzled out to nothing.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I'm just surprised at you guys. You guys must, no offense, you guys took dumb pills or something this week. I'm sorry.
Well, look,
I'm sorry.
I'm not above and beyond being
Look,
dumb.
I mean, here's the thing. That the point is that at the end of the, they're doing the news reports and they're like, none of this, Suburbicon was a great little neighborhood until these people came in. So, you're left with, what you're going to get for the next 50 years. Like, we're in 1950. You can kind of piece it together to present day and be like, you know what? This is the start of something very, I'll say it, fucked up. Because, like, yeah, you're right. It's not over. And it's not going to be over for a long time. Because the fact that the little old lady's like, well, nothing ever happened like this when they were, that's insane. That is the definition of insanity. That's what these people take away from it. So.
I think it's just frustrating that, yes, it's unfortunate that back in the 1950s, and there's still a lot of racism now, but I think we're farther and we progressed more over the history of being more acceptable to the black community and to other races and stuff. So watching it now and going back to a point where it's literally at the beginning of it, it's just frustrating to watch because we've come so far past it.
Let's,
by the way, first off, I didn't mean to call you guys dumb. I apologize, truly. Anyway,
trust me. Listen, no.
But okay, but I want to take that point. We've come so far.
Apologize.
Yes,
have we come so far? Though?
That's what I'm saying. Like,
I think we've come farther than where we were 50 years ago.
Okay, fair enough. But nonetheless, you talk to someone like Daryl Kristian, president of Black Hollywood Live. And like I have plenty of other black friends. There's still a long way to go.
And it doesn't help in our current situation, leadership notwithstanding, in things that are it's more relevant today than it has been in a while. It's been really brought up to the forefront in a lot of discussion. Particularly with current events that have taken place this past year. I mean, I don't want to make this a political show. It's hard to talk about racism and not be politicized about it. We here, I think we are smart people. I'm not going to say that in watching a movie, I've said this many times before, there are things I might miss. You calling me dumb, I get where it's coming from. Don't worry, I get where it's coming from.
Yeah.
It's tough, though, with recent events, but let's talk about the true story about why Clooney put this in there, okay? There was a family, the Myers family.
William and Daisy Myers.
Yeah, and they were African-American, and they moved into a cookie-cutter suburb populated entirely by white people in the summer of 1957, which is
Levittown, Pennsylvania.
This movie takes place around that time, right? 1957, 59. And it's Levittown is a planned community for some 17,000 almost identical homes. And William Levitt, he built this project. Now, it should be known that William Levitt, at the time, was a national icon and a titan on the scale of Henry Ford and Walt Disney. Time magazine put him on the cover. But he was a racist.
He was a
huge racist. Levitt's cultural moment notably excluded blacks until the Myers moved in, and he really did try to get them out of his neighborhood. So That to me is a story that can be told. And then, because I didn't really know anything about this Levitt guy, but geez, the parallels today. This guy was an extremely successful businessman who held power. He was considered an icon in business. He was put on Time magazine. He was really put on Time magazine, unlike some other people. He was really in Time magazine, and yet he was a bigot and a racist. That to me is a story. It's almost like when we're watching The Founder, right? I didn't know anything about Ray Kroc, right? The guy was a dick, right? That's a story that I wouldn't mind, because that's a part of history that I didn't know, right? And what about this family, the Myers family, and what they had to endure just because they wanted to live in a seemingly nice neighborhood? And if you want to parody suburbia, like the seemingly perfect place, like this is a place that should have been a safe haven for them, that's a story that on its own I think would have made a good movie.
Yeah, a better story to focus on. And we'd actually care about this family now.
Yes.
You know, which sounds terrible, but like we would actually be more emotionally invested in watching this family go through the tragedies and discrimination that they went through back in that time. And I think that could have been, that's a solid story in and of itself for another director to take on. I would like to see that.
And again, that movie too probably wouldn't be a big commercial movie. It probably released maybe like this. I don't know, because there's not going to be any comedy to it.
I mean, if Denzel took it on, you know, if he wanted to take on another story of similar nature, or you know, Spike Lee or someone that, you know what I mean, then I think I could see it having legs.
DuVernay or
And even Clooney said that. He's like, there is a story that he, in another version that he personally would love to see someone take that on from that perspective.
Well, but he even said this story isn't really a story that he would be, that he can tell. So I'm like, well, why did you bother?
Yeah, why did you do it?
You shouldn't have
then?
bothered. Like you had, and again, it was a Coen brothers. You have to wonder, like, the whole history of it all.
Well, the original script is, you know, I'm sure it's gone through many iterations in terms of just the Coen brothers, but originally dating back to 1960 or 1986.
Yeah, they worked on it after Blood Simple, their first movie.
Yeah.
But if you look at some of these fine points in Suburbicon, and again, without having interviewed the Coen brothers, it sort of kind of, they probably looked at it and said, tonally, what do we got to do? And then it almost seems as if that's what they wrote Fargo off of, because it's very similar. A guy who wants to do an insurance scheme of murder, and he hires henchmen to do his bidding, and then there's an investigation. And that movie was about character. That movie was about people that I cared for, because it was about, where as much as Fargo was as much a character, where Suburbicon here should have been as much a character in this movie. Like, where we make fun, like at the beginning, where we're making fun of the people and the mailman. That mailman was funny. Like, the first 5 minutes of this movie, I said, I'm in, because this is going to make fun of suburbia in such a cool way. And it sort of kind of didn't.
I do agree. I would have liked to see a couple more of those snippets, especially like the animated portion of it.
That was funny.
I did enjoy that, and it would have been funny to have interstitials of like that before.
But you could do that modern day too, because Disney in Florida has a place called we'll have to look it up, but I think it's like Paradise something. It's a neighborhood that Disney built, where all of the houses look the same. And they have a community there. Like, you could do that today. You don't even have to do it in the 50s. And that could be fun, funny, great satire. And it would be tied into what's happening today.
Well, I think what's great about the 50s is that, you know, we're basically on a pedestal post World War II of like, we're the victors. You know, we came in, saved it. Like, it's just it's this falsified notion of like everything's gonna be okay forever. You know, moving forward, and now we got the perfect
Celebration
picture.
Florida.
Celebration, thank you. That's it. Celebration Florida. Yeah, it's a whole community that Disney built. How the people live. So, like, you could have done that today. But you're right. The 50s, too, there was an innocence too, because part of what's great about talking about the 50s is they're coming out of World War II. There was patriotism, but there was this innocence that as we go into the 60s, then there became rebellion. And that, I think this movie, Suburbicon, takes place in about 57, 58, or 59. So it was right on the cusp of that changeover. And that, to me, is fascinating. And that can be made fun of, where innocence is lost or just rejiggered. Yeah. So, and that's what I wanted, in this movie. I wanted good people because of their own hand, have put themselves into situations where they become not so good people. Yeah. But I don't think that the father, I don't think he was good people, period.
No, he was terrible.
And neither was Margaret or Rose. Rose was the sacrifice, we'll call her.
Okay. No, I want to get your guys' take, because I think if you take some of these individual scenes, I think they do play very funny. They're very play-like. For me, they were very well paced and edited, and I had a lot of fun with it. I know you guys brought up the death scene when he's eating the sandwich. Gardner is, but for me, I enjoy, because the way just Matt Damon is just enjoying that sandwich, and the way he goes for that milk to quench his thirst, it was good.
It was performed very well, and again, I got no problem with Clooney's direction. We can talk about that a little, because there was an article, and I think it came from Film School Rejects, that said it posed a question that was something like, should Clooney never direct a movie again? And I'm like, what the hell kind of a stupid question is that? He's a good director. He has made some good movies. Yeah. Regardless of what you think about Suburbicon, he knows how to get performances out of his actors. He knows how to set up a shot. He works with good editing. I had no problem with the pacing of this movie, so to speak. What other scene did you want to...
when Oscar Isaac came in, he really lit up that screen.
I agree.
That was fun.
And I thought I was going to get a character. Oh, this character's smarter than the average bear. But then he just became, no, I'm going to take all your money. Oh boy. And I was like, can we just have somebody who's sort of kind of good in this movie outside of the uncle or the cop? The cop that was in the movie, I thought, but we didn't. The movie wasn't about, I guess, trying to figure out the mystery of this insurance scam that was taking place. But Oscar Isaac was great, and apparently that role was what George Clooney was supposed to play when the Coen brothers came up with the script, which I think Clooney would have been good, because Clooney can play that too. But Oscar Isaacs, you're right. He did
he had this smile, yes. And obviously, Clooney would have been great, but just the fact that he was a little bit ethnic, right? He's not white. I enjoyed that side of it.
Mm-hmm. Did you like him as well?
No, I love Oscar Isaac. Yeah. I was just gonna say, it was he's also more ethnically ambiguous, and you can kind of believe he himself might have personal ties to the mob. Especially when he went into this deep investigation of all the red flags and stuff. And I liked him because he was smart, he was intelligent, he answered the questions that the audience was thinking of. It was are my predictions coming true, and I like that, and he set up and answered a lot of things for us. But also his untimely demise was also very predictable. I'm they're gonna poison him, crap. And then sure enough, his death was, unfortunate to watch. Kind of comedic in a way.
That was the darkest humor.
The trailer also gave that away.
Did it? Because I don't remember.
There's a clear shot of Matt Damon dragging the body. I felt the trailer just gave away everything in this film that made this film I could pick from every scene. I was all right, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen. Sure enough, it did. And Oscar's death was I say Oscar, but the investor's death.
Bud
It's
Cooper.
Like, yeah, but
The insurance guy.
like, crap, you're gonna die too. And then even that, his poisoning led to the whole sandwich and the milk, and that was again a very predictable death because we just saw it 10 minutes ago.
Here's the thing. I don't think, at that point, his death. Like, I'll give you Bud Cooper's death, but as far as he's concerned, like that's the whole point. You're not gonna spend if they wanted to hide it from you, they would have maybe had him pick up the sandwich and then you don't know, and that's it. But like the fact that you're watching him eat this sandwich for 5 minutes and then drink the milk until it's almost gone.
Irony can be pretty ironic sometimes. No, obviously, to me it was who's going to eat the sandwich. I knew that the kid wasn't going to eat the sandwich. And then when the henchman comes in the house, I thought maybe the henchman would have eaten the sandwich.
No,
I knew somebody was going to die from that sandwich.
He was going to eat the sandwich because the trailer shows him clearly sitting at the table eating the sandwich.
Oh, I didn't.
Like, the trailer gave away everything.
I didn't remember that.
Everything.
For some reason.
I don't remember trailers that. Like, I remember the tone of what the trailer did for me, but truthfully, ask me about most trailers, and I'm like, I don't know what the hell happened in the trailer.
And I'm not really big into marketing and throwing me off, but this is a clear example of the trailer revealing everything and can also conversely ruin the movie for you. It did that for me.
We actually had a big conversation about trailers last week. We'll bring it up just a little bit here, in which there was an article in the Boston Globe with a writer, I believe it was Ty Burr, who said, trailers lie, and I'm not paying attention to any trailers. And I've worked with trailers for the better part of my career, whether it was Universal, whether working for General Cinema or Hoyt Cinemas, it was always about programming trailers, and then for Lionsgate for a decade. Trailers are a marketing tool. And sometimes you have a movie, you just don't know how to market. So trailers can be cheats, and I get that. They need to, the studio has to try to get people to spend the bucks to go see the movie. And to your point, well, let's look this year. You can add Suburbicon to the list. Mother, that trailer was a complete lie. The Snowman, that trailer was. That it cheated. It didn't lie because the movie said you were going to see a mystery. We saw a mystery, just not a very good one. But we've all seen trailers, and we've talked about it on this show too, about how they'll have a scene in the trailer that when the theatrical movie comes out, that scene that we saw in the trailer is not in the movie, and for some reason, it just gets cut. That happens. But first and foremost, a trailer is a tool. It's meant to garner excitement, curiosity, and try to get people enticed into seeing a movie, whether that movie's good or bad. But sometimes a studio is faced with a movie where they go, okay, we've got a problem on our hands. How are we going to market this movie? And I think a clear choice was in this thing to try to make it more comedic. Yeah. And I didn't remember the trailer as much as you did. But yeah, I mean,
saw the trailer 10 times because we cover a lot of movies here, so we go to the movies a lot. I see this trailer all the time.
So, and to your point though, if you're seeing him eating that peanut butter sandwich, if you're seeing him drag Oscar Isaacs, then the trailer gave away a lot.
I challenge, well, not really challenge, but I say, listen, watch this film, then go back and watch the trailer, and you're like, yeah, I got it. The trailer gave everybody everything.
Well, if you kind of look at it, man, I do recognize it with a lot of trailers that they will be from start to finish, basically the movie, and whether or not you realize it, because most trailers, at least, from my vantage point, historically have been more of a hodgepodge of mixing moments. More and more trailers that I see today are from start to finish the movie.
They can be, and I hate trailers that give away too much.
Yeah.
And I know we'll talk about Thor, and that there's a lot to talk about regarding the trailer there. But I think Disney does a good job with their Star Wars and even their Marvel properties, where
but this isn't
they get
Disney.
you. No. I understand, but what I'm getting at is that a trailer should give you snippets of the movie, and you should get after watching it, you should have some semblance of a tone. Suburbicon, like you feel, I was sold on the tone because it's the kind of movie that I go see because I like dark humor. I like that kind of satire. But if they can't figure out what the movie really is, the marketing department has to come up with some way to try to sell this movie. I don't think all trailers, I should say, give everything away. There are some trailers that are done really well. When you look at what Warner Brothers has done, especially with their horror movies, like The Conjuring, it was a great trailer, right? And you knew it was a horror movie, and it didn't give away the movie. You know, you need to excite people and tonally tell them this movie is a horror movie or this movie is a comedy, and not give away all of the best laughs, because we've talked about that too. That happens often.
Well, I think a couple of things for me. Usually, when I see from start to finish in terms of a trailer, it usually happens more with comedy. I remember like when I really started paying attention to trailers and kind of studying them, it was when The Hangover came out, and literally that trailer is from start to finish. In terms of the movie, right? It's just a little bit disjointed and gives you enough, and obviously, very, very successful movie. Two, with trailers, it's also like, yeah, you're right. You're going to pick one singular thing to focus on. It's not like when you have a movie like this, let's say in a perfect world, both storylines did work for you guys. You're not going to all of a sudden in the trailer, if 20% of the movie is the racial tension and 80% of it is the double indemnity plot, you're not going to 80-20 the trailer in the same way, because it wouldn't make sense. You're gonna pick what actually works.
And I think from a marketing standpoint, because I didn't catch that this movie was gonna have any racial in terms at all. I think it was smart for them to keep that out.
No.
But again, I didn't even get the double indemnity plot. I didn't even get the plot that
there are two storylines going on.
Yeah, I didn't get that there was a plot where this guy plotted to kill his wife so that they can get the insurance money and go to Aruba. Not that I wanted everything to be cut out for me. I literally thought that this was a guy who got
I think the big reveal
into
moments were definitely shown in the trailer. Like the big reveals that where you're like, oh man, that happened. You're like, yeah, I already saw it.
Yeah, I just don't think major plot points were given away.
That's the thing. Like, as far as I was concerned, it didn't give away the reasoning behind that stuff.
Sure.
Because there's definitely trailers that give away like the inciting incident.
Sure.
And the inciting incident doesn't happen until like 30-40 minutes in. You're like, okay, like we know what the inciting incident. Just get to it, please.
Right.
The whole trailer campaign 1, 2, and 3 is built around setting that up. Like, let's just get to it. Anyway, let's take a step back and go back into production. Something pretty cool. The locations department, led by location manager Michael Burmester, and the key department members, they were nominated for the prestigious California On Locations Film Award for Team of the Year. Mm-hmm. So congratulations to them.
And basically, they shot in L.A. Because that was just Matt Damon's request. Interestingly enough. He basically said, like, listen, he goes, I wanted to work with Clooney again. It's a Coen brothers. I wanted to be in this movie. He goes, but I told them, he goes, he had 4 movies lined up. He was starting The Martian, okay? Then he went right into Great Wall, which led right into Jason Bourne, which went right into Downsizing. Guy's got a lot of work.
Yeah.
And he's basically, it was 2 solid years of work. And he goes, and I had sworn up and down to my family that I wouldn't take anything else. He goes, but when George calls, he goes, I was like, I'd rather be waterboarded than turn you down, which is a testament. I mean, it's a good relationship, right? He goes, but I have to be with my family. Then I remember we're in London working on Bourne, and I was sitting at that dinner table with my wife when this text came in that said, how about if I move it to LA? And it was George who suggested it. I turned my phone to my wife, and she goes, okay, you're doing it. So I like that because they worked well together. You could tell that they're friends, and if he didn't get paid a ton of money to do this movie, right? So
even George Clooney didn't make a lot of money in this film.
And so I like that camaraderie. I like that spirit. It's like, hey, my friend asked me to be in a movie. I can't turn him down. He's George Clooney.
This was one of the films that, like, they collaborated together as creators, as artists together. It wasn't for, you know, I mean, I think the time that they released it was they were gunning for the Oscar season. But in a lot of interviews, Clooney himself said, like, he didn't make a lot of money for this. This was one of his passion projects. But just because it's a passion project doesn't mean you should do it.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, it just needed work, but I like how they got together. And when you look at some other of Clooney's movies, well, Monuments Men, right? This is a movie where he got his buddies together, and that's a movie that I'll say was unfairly panned by critics, and I don't think it's that bad of a movie. John Comerford, who used to do the show regularly with us, he and I had an amazing conversation about the way critics felt about Monuments Men and the way I perceived the movie to be a fun look at history that he did really well. And he worked with his friends. Yeah, and it's a good movie. That's why I felt that question, should Clooney give up directing, was an insult to the man, because I think Clooney does have a passion. He has a passion for film. He knows what he's doing. Not every movie, I don't have to love every movie that they do. He shouldn't give up directing. That was it was an insulting question to me. I think he is a filmmaker and he loves movies.
What I don't appreciate, like, there's definitely, some people fall into this where they just like to work with their friends but they don't really focus on the product. So granted, the result this time wasn't, let's say, the greatest, right? But you can't, I don't look at it like George didn't go into it and was like, fuck it, let's just have fun. He legitimately wanted to put out, the best foot forward that he could. Just didn't turn out the way. But there's definitely movies that the number one goal is just to have fun with people's friends.
Yeah, no, he definitely took making this movie seriously. I don't doubt that at all. And again, that goes regardless of what I thought of the movie. He literally, I think as a filmmaker, he takes filmmaking quite seriously. He really does. I think he takes time to set up shots, to talk to his actors. I think it's evident on screen.
Yeah, he's a good director, and the movies that he has directed, he's been nominated for.
Sure.
What was it, The Good Night?
Good Luck and Good Night.
Good Luck and
Great
Good Night.
movie.
He got nominated for director for that film. So it's not like he can't direct. He definitely can. He has the artistic ability and the creativity and the drive and the passion for it.
Yeah.
So it's just because you don't like one of his films doesn't mean that he should stop doing it.
No, absolutely. What was the movie called, the one that he made about Chuck Barris? The Gong Show, that Sam Rockwell. That movie, he was great. And look at the performance he gets out of Sam Rockwell. He knows how to get performances from his actors, and I think it's because of his personality. I've never been on set with him, but I don't picture him to be the guy that yells at people a lot. I think he really does nurture good performances from his people, and people like to work with him.
Well, he nurtured a great performance from the kid.
Oh,
one of the quotes he said, just if you have something, just try it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was, especially for a kid. Listen, at the end of the day, he could be an amazing actor regardless, but he needs that level of comfort to, let's say, especially if he wasn't, just to try it and we'll adjust. Right.
Yeah, and Noah Jupe also said that that Clooney was always making everyone laugh on set. So it's like we know that Clooney has that ability to just make people comfortable and have them just perform at their high caliber A-list self.
Yeah, Noah Jupe was great. I would have loved to. I really
liked him.
Yeah, I really would have loved to have been on set while they were filming that scene with Matt Damon, because he was so, I want to know, what Matt Damon may have, look, do it. Obviously, that's not coming from me. How does he set a kid like that? He's saying such horrible things. It's like when you watch a horror movie and the killer's going after the kid. You always read stories where that person who plays the monster is trying to set up a relationship with that kid so that the kid can try to differentiate between making the movie and that. This is a young kid going through some pretty heavy dialogue about where his the father's going to kill him. They both played it great, and I believed each beat that they took on that table. And that was probably, for me, the scene that was the most uncomfortable within all of Suburbicon. But yeah, that kid was great. The kid was really, really good throughout the whole thing.
Poor kid just didn't know any better.
Didn't know any better. But again,
and you felt for him too, because he was going through all this. He's emotionally traumatic and like traumatized, and especially during the moment when like the whole questioning, or they have all the perpetrators lined up, and he clearly sees the guys who robbed them. Like, and you feel for him because he knows more than that Matt Damon's Gardner's letting on. So it's like, because you're also rooting for him because he is kind of like the voice of the audience in a way.
Sort of.
Or just like the audience is following him and rooting for everything, and he wants justice for this character.
Yeah.
But he's so young that people aren't going to believe him, and that's what's frustrating. But that's why you also like this kid, because you just want him. You're just rooting for him.
And he put in a solid performance. I mean, I liked him for his performance. He did a good job, regardless of who this movie's focused on. I mean, the kid was good. The kid came through. Like, when he was crying, I really got that he was crying. When he was in fear because that killer was trying to kill him, that was a really good scene. And then they end up killing the uncle, which, we see the uncle for 2 minutes, but we're thinking he might be the bright spot of all this, but Julianne Moore's character turns out to be really vicious and mean too, and she threatens him as well, like really bad. And it's just, wow.
I didn't really understand Rose Margaret. I mean, I love Julianne Moore.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be clear about that. We've seen other anatomy shows where I'm just praising Julianne Moore. She's amazing. I didn't really understand why she had to be a twin. I mean, this is one of those roles you could have casted another also equally talented actress to play the sister, but I think it was just off-putting when they make her, who's a very recognizable face,
sure,
and then you split her into two. You're like, nah, that something's off here, so you have to suspend that disbelief. Like, you're not a twin, but I can believe you're a twin right now. But it was hard to believe when Rose died, and then Margaret now became like the partner to Gardner. I didn't believe the dynamic because she's so like, what happened to the first sister? And I don't believe the second sister. And they're the same people because I know they're acted by the same person. So I think this is where it didn't help with the story when you have a recognizable actor playing two different characters.
It took me, I knew that they were both being played by Julianne Moore. Phil, you and I had this conversation just before we came in here, so I'm going to throw this question to you. So when we're first introduced to the characters, right, the Rose and Margaret, okay, I thought, I didn't even put them together as being twins. I put one as, that's the mother who lives with them because she's in a wheelchair. That's the wife. And then I found out, no, the woman in the wheelchair is the actual mother. Wife. And I was like going, wait, what? She looks so much older than... I go, they're twin sisters?
How did you understand that they were twin sisters?
I just thought that they.
They're literally
I thought
twins.
she was playing her mother and her daughter.
No.
Just for the similarity.
This isn't Chinatown.
Oh, why wouldn't it be?
I'm just baffled at the thought that you didn't pick up.
I thought because she looks so much older.
No.
Than that.
You just put a blonde wig on her, and she's the same.
But anyway,
person.
you had a point to make or a question to ask.
Well, no, she answered the question for me. I guess again, I took a double dose of dumb pills that day. So.
See, at least I clearly picked up that they were twins.
No, I just picked up that's the mother. That's who she's married to, and the mother's staying with them, and the mother just also happens to be played by Julianne Moore, and they just want to show that they look alike or something because she looked older to me watching her.
I mean, the movie didn't go too far into it, and I mean, it might be reading and assigning far too much into it, but it's just like to me, Matt Damon's character was kind of like the typical guy who just kind of got bored of one thing, and then lo and behold, that's the satire. Like, he got bored of one thing, and so to keep the excitement going, he basically goes and gets the same thing again, just from start one.
Yeah, and I'll take it a step once so they conspired to kill off the wife, And I think the quote-unquote car accident, I think he tried to kill her. I think that car
yeah,
accident...
100%.
Yeah. And I think the wife sort of kind of knew. Well, Rose or Margaret, I don't...
Rose.
Rose is the mother.
Yeah, so I
Margaret's
just
the
figured
sister.
Rose knew, in a sense, that her husband was trying to bump her off. And, and then, these two thugs come into the house and...
I was just put off by, like, Julianne Moore, she's great.
Yeah.
But she's a recognizable face that we know she's not a twin. And so to see two
Neither
of
was
them,
Lindsay Lohan.
No, I know. But, like...
Come on!
In fairness, when we got Lindsay Lohan, no one knew who the fuck Lindsay Lohan was at that time.
And that's a
I love
remake
that
of
movie.
a far
I love that
better...
movie.
The original is a far better one than the Lindsay Lohan
Whatever.
one.
I'm just
There's no
saying.
whatever.
No,
It's a
I
better movie.
get that, but that's also my point. It's just, we know who Julianne Moore is. So when you kill off one of them and you're just trying to understand, I was like, okay, now here's the second sister, but this relationship is too awkward to be real and believable. It didn't hit with me. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, once I
didn't
figured
like
out
the
the double
dynamic.
indemnity thing. Well, let's talk about. There is something that I found interesting was the sex scene that the little boy that Nikki walks in on. And it involved the ping pong battle. And according to Matt Damon, he's like, admittedly, that he actually inflicted real pain on himself while trying to make it seem authentic and caused one of his butt cheeks to be completely discolored and bruised. He goes, yeah, it's like we realized the way the shot was, it looked like I was hitting her. If I hit myself, and do I really let myself have it? I was spanking myself instead of spanking her. And Moore jumped in to offer a little bit of the clarity about the logistics, saying he'd hit, then I'd yell. So he was hitting himself, not Julianne Moore. So when he got home, his wife
He was
like,
giving himself an extra push.
"What the hell is going?"
Yeah, his wife questioned.
His wife was like, "What the hell are you doing, George? I want to talk to you."
We're filming a
Right.
sex scene.
We're filming that.
You suffer for your art.
sexy- Yeah,
That
movie
was
magic. Because I thought he was hitting. Well, I didn't think he was hitting her. I didn't think he was hitting himself.
Here's the thing. At the end of the day, for me, that was the least concern of mine. I was more like, wow, this is what the kid walks in on.
Yeah. But also, it was one of the first moments where you realize that they're officially, like, kind of a thing. Or, well, not kind of, but, like,
Not kind of.
they're officially a thing. You're like,
Without avoidance
"Oh,
of doubt,
wait, what?"
they are a thing.
Yeah.
They are a thing.
But this was, I feel for the audience, this is one of the moments where you actually, it answers that it's like, oh yeah, they are together.
Yeah, the light goes
You're like,
off.
oh shit,
Eureka.
something's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those epiphany moments.
Yeah.
I wanted to see him get out of this one. Because I forget the timeline right now. But remember, after they have the suspects lined up, he gives that crappy speech about not remembering and so
Right.
forth. So I wanted to see if there was a way he was going to get out of this one. Like, what the hell he would
What
even
is
come
he
up
gonna
with.
say?
Yeah.
I lost the ping pong ball. I'm trying to hit it out of her.
Nope. That kid is forever traumatized
Yeah,
in so many ways.
yeah, and I was too.
I think we all were.
Alrighty. What else do we want to move on to more specifically? We could talk about editing. Josh Brolin was supposed to be in this movie, but his entire subplot, whatever you want to call it, got completely cut out.
And he wasn't in the trailer.
Yeah, no, he wasn't. George Clooney admitted that Josh Brolin's scenes deflated the tension of the film because Brolin's character was more of a racially surged kind of person. So, and they, during the editing process, they cut a lot of things out to like get the tone back of it's not just racism, but Brolin's character was one of the more racist characters, and they cut him out to like get the movie kind of somewhat back on track. So.
Yeah.
And then also George Clooney said that the muggers, the robbers, were originally more comedic characters, and they cut a lot of their moments too.
Yeah, and again, you sort of kind of gotta. Okay, and this is why I make the comparisons to Fargo. When you have that Peter Stormare character in Fargo, the wood chipper guy, right? I mean, he's a great character, right? And I thought, okay, so these are going to be the henchmen. And there's a line of dialogue. The cop says, "Hey, I want you guys to come down." I saw these guys in the middle of the highway. They were beating each other to death, and you sort of kind of got a sense that they were sort of like a Mutt and Jeff
slapstick kind of
right.
people.
But they really sort of kind of weren't. And like I would have liked them to be more like, they could be menacing but sort of buffoonish or sort of silly. But they too were just, they weren't fully, and again, you just get the sense, were they with the mob or were they just two guys that he hired to kill his wife, and he wanted to make it look as if, you know, they came to rob the house. But again, if you read certain things said that Damon's Gardner Lodge was into the mob for some money, and they were coming to collect, and
this was the deal he made with them.
I guess.
Here's the thing. I mean, that to me is a valid thing, and evidence in the movie points to that. Mm-hmm. I didn't really need more than that.
No.
So, 100%.
But to me, the character that shined, well, the uncle could have shined more because he's this big guy who obviously cares for the kid a lot, right? And then you had to kill him off with a pair of scissors to the back. But Oscar Isaacs, again, like you said at the top, he really, when he showed up, he was great. And I thought he was going to be our detective. I mean, he's like an insurance actuary guy trying to figure out, and it was just the way he did it. I mean, no. We just got to go through all this, and I don't see anything that's jumping out at me at all. And the way he was asking his questions, and but you're right, they set up the lie thing, like so, it's like, oh well, somebody's gonna get. Why would you have a lie standing so close to your sugar? But Oscar Isaacs was great.
Yeah,
great.
He had his good solid 5 minutes, and then that was it.
Yeah, and I thought he was going to end up being the character that's piecing everything together. Much like Frances McDormand's character. But again, with that character, we got to know so much about her home life and everything that you really. And she's trying to piece this silly mystery together. In a sense, this could have been a silly mystery. But I don't know. I just think that there was a reason why the Coen brothers didn't make this movie. And I think that they couldn't find how to make this work tonally for them. And it's just funny that they had envisioned George Clooney to be in it. And they're collaborators too. So if George says, "Hey, I really like this script," again, it's part of that collaborative process, right? Mm-hmm. So, well, if you want to make it, go ahead. It's yours.
Yeah. 100%. Let's talk about the music, because we've talked about Alexander Desplat quite a number of times at this point. I mean, a couple of movies we've covered: King's Speech, Godzilla, Grand Budapest Hotel.
Monuments Men.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed. And did we do Ides of March? I believe maybe we did, or maybe we did not.
I think that was before our time.
Yeah, that was Ryan Gosling.
Yeah, that was before our time, I think.
Either way, I think he's a great composer.
I think the music was. There were moments in this movie. We always talk about how movies and music help elevate us, or it doesn't. I thought there was so much music in this film, especially when they were like establishing like the tone and the characters and the storylines. I noticed the music all through the first 20 minutes of this film. And even during the thrilling part, during the whole robbery and stuff, there was a lot of music, a lot of upspell. Not that it ruined the film, but there were moments where we didn't need the music.
See, for me, Desplat is tonally, I think he's a great composer. Mm-hmm. He can help set up tone, and he can help music be like the perfect bed that helps set the tone for the scene that the audience is about to watch. I also think he succeeds in doing multi-genre type movies, as you mentioned. He did Godzilla. He did what was it, King's Speech. He was supposed to do Rogue One, but due to, I forget exactly what it was, why he didn't end up doing it, but he gets picked to do a lot of different types of movies. And to me, he's a tonal director. He's much different than, say, a John Williams, who full orchestra, and he can set a tone as well. But when you look at the first 10 minutes of Suburbicon, I mean, that music sets up a perfect tone for what you're potentially getting into. He nails the 50s, and at the same time, it's original, And that's where Desplat works the best. Is just setting tone up for a scene. And that's why I think he gets so much work on multi-genre type movies.
Yeah. He does wonderful.
Yeah.
So, and I couldn't agree more. I loved the juxtaposition of, especially, it was almost like the more intense the scenes got, the quirkier the music, and I rather enjoyed that.
Yeah.
So I thought that worked part of the satire there.
He was the perfect choice for this, and even in when we did Monuments Men, talking about him, his music was like, it had that jingoistic, patriotic kind of tone that you would get from like a Kelly's Heroes kind of a movie. Like,
and it was during the war, too.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely. So that's where Desplat, I think, that's where his strengths are, and that's why he gets hired. And he works good, obviously, I think, with Clooney.
Absolutely. All right. We talked a lot about promotions, so don't need to rehash that. But why don't we jump into pure numbers, which there are not a lot of big numbers here.
No, and
didn't get a worldwide release.
Yeah, and please also forgive too, because the one thing that I couldn't find is a production budget on this movie, and I can't see this movie being more than 30.
Yeah, I read that it was $25 million for Black Bear Pictures to produce and $10 million for Paramount Pictures to distribute. So, given around there.
Yeah, which makes
Not
sense.
about
a
right.
lot. Not a lot.
No.
So, and I mean, which is, you would think most of that budget would go to the star power, but I think, as we talked about, I think even Julianne and the rest of them, I'm sure they took a pay cut.
Sure.
Yeah, and George Clooney himself said he only got $50,000 to write, direct, and produce. That's it. A man who makes well over millions per movie.
Just the star.
Yeah, just a star in it. And to do everything else that the creator does, he only got $50,000 out of it. That's not a lot.
Yeah,
at
no.
all.
Well, he also,
That's
to that
chump
point.
change.
Well, but what's great about it, he recognized the fact of, like, okay, listen, if he's not going to make a commercially viable movie and this is his passion project, like, it's not going to warrant that. And so to even get, like, being the type of guy, like, to even get $50,000, like, it's just a nice sort of bonus. He didn't need it. Making that movie was more than enough for him.
And again, I really do believe that he's a passionate filmmaker. I really do. I think he loves, he loves film. That's why he continues to act. And by no means should he let let's say the failure of Suburbicon. Listen, it might ding him for a little bit, like ego-wise, and I'm sure you don't want to put out a movie that people don't generally like, and you want to make a successful movie. And when you make a movie that's not a successful movie that other people are relying, like Paramount or the production companies, they're not going to see their back ends to this. So, but again, don't quit. Jesus, good God, man, you are a star. Like, you are like literally a bona fide Hollywood star that people, look up to you. And you do have a passion for directing. Keep doing it, because, you'll make good movies. You will. You have a passion for doing it. So, unfortunately for this movie, as of November, as I'm looking November 1st, we're looking at about $3.6 million
Yeah, not too good.
No, and it only did 2.8. It came in number 9 at 2,000 theaters on its opening weekend. And granted, it had a little bit of competition, but it was a different movie. Like, you know,
Right.
the
This
people who
was
are
counter programming.
yeah, people who are going to Saw or Jigsaw aren't necessarily going to be going to Suburbicon.
Right. And this film was projected to make $8 million, but because it opened it opened less than they thought, they lowered it down to $3 million.
Yeah. Once again, tracking really doesn't, really didn't peg this one. It didn't peg anything over the weekend correctly. But, and again, for Paramount, I understand why Paramount would want to distribute it. But yet again, that they're still going through their regrowing pains, so to speak.
Well, that's the problem. When you talk about regrowing pain, like it's when it takes 2 to 3 years on average to make a movie, you're not going to see the fruits of that labor till down the line.
Right.
So, but nonetheless, obviously, that doesn't mean you don't want the things that you got currently slated to still hit.
Yeah, and then eventually, it'll open up in some foreign territories. They'll have the home, VOD market, within a couple of months. But the movie, for all intents and purposes, is just it's DOA. Because now we're going into, really, the holiday season more or less is going to start with Thor. And then we have so many other movies between now and Thanksgiving.
But now we actually have the Academy Award season actually starting. So, and if they were gunning for that, unfortunately, it's not going to do anything for them.
Here's the thing. I think if they were gunning for it, they hit too early anyway. Like, now, I just remember now, like, most Oscar nominations, like, last week of November and just everything in December. Like, it's just insane the amount of movies in December.
But imagine, if you will, if this movie was really good. This time period would have been the best time period because you would have come out, rave reviews, directing, performances. Like, you would have been first out of the gate that people remember and that are talking about all through November.
This would
when
be
these
the
other
movie
movies
people
out.
would be comparing other movies to.
Yeah. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, just imagine, like, if this movie was really good, this, I think, would have been a good time period for it to come out of the gate because it would have come out swinging and then people would have said, oh, this is the movie that people are going to have to beat or they're going to have to be better than Matt Damon or Julianne Moore or whatever.
Well,
so, but it didn't turn out that way.
D- on Cinema Score, 25 on the good old Rotten Tomatoes. As they say, disappointing misfire for director George Clooney. Suburbicon attempts to juggle social satire, racial commentary, and murder mystery, and ends up making a mess of all three.
I agree.
So,
yeah, and a D- at Cinema Score. I want to know how you equate.
well,
Like, how is this
Snowman
not
got a
an-
D.
Yeah, and deservedly so. D-. But when you're at a D-, like, what's the fraction that could have, like, how many did you have to miss to get an F? Because Mother got an F.
Mother was
an unprecedented.
I think you have to. Well, I think there is a difference because
D-?
there's an impassioned hatred, right? With Mother,
Sure.
You weren't just like, okay, that's a bad movie. You were like, fuck this piece of shit. Like, literally, like, there's some of the quotes that you could see.
Right.
This, you're like, okay, that was this was a bad movie, but, like, I don't want, I might hate it, but hate not in the sense of, like, I would go out of my way to trash this movie.
Yeah, and
I think the acting is what saved it.
Yeah, and
It could have saved it a little bit.
I think that the difference too between, say, Suburbicon and Snowman and their Cinema Score ratings, as opposed to the Rotten Tomatoes ratings, which they were both sort of kind of in line. 25% is not good. Mother had a very high Rotten Tomatoes. It was either
in
the
the
high
80s.
80s or such, where it had an F, which is still weird to me that many critics like Mother
That's where
as
it
much
didn't
as
match
they
up.
did. It didn't match up at all. These last two movies that we've talked about, and Phil, you and I talked Snowman last week, which I think Snowman made me angrier than this movie. You know, I didn't like this movie, but yeah, Snowman was just an utter mess, that failed on many levels. It was laughable. This wasn't a laughable mess to me, Suburbicon, but yeah, D- is tough. You ain't gonna get any second week business out of this movie.
Well, not especially now. You got Thor.
Yeah.
We are just hitting it hard and heavy.
Yeah.
To open to number 9, yeah, you're gonna get even lower than that.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, let's tell you what we've got coming up. We've got Thor coming up. We're gonna not do it on a regular Friday. We're gonna tape a little bit earlier in the week. We'll try to keep you guys updated. It'll be more than likely Thursday, somewhere between 2 and 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
I'm looking forward to talking about that one.
That'll be fun.
Absolutely.
That'll be fun.
And look forward to at some point, or one way too. I also saw this Bad Moms Christmas.
That's
We're gonna have Murder in the Orient Express.
Yes.
Which I'm
excited
really
for
looking
that one.
forward to.
You guys got to remember, we got to do our short little reviews. Right?
Yeah.
We promised the
right.
people last week that we'd start doing our short little reviews for movies that we don't cover in depth, and we haven't. So people stay on us. You guys stay on me.
Maybe we should start that next week, since if we're not going to do an in-depth on Bad Moms Christmas, because that also opens up this week, going up against Thor. And like I said, you got Murder in the Orient Express. I think a little bit later on this month, we got Coco. We've got Justice League, which we're gonna, we'll have to really talk about. And I know I'm missing a movie.
Yeah, there's
Star Wars.
Well,
That's
no,
not
that's December.
December.
I'm talking like in November. There's at least one. Oh, there's Daddy's Home 2.
I'm looking forward to that comedy.
It's sort of kind of, yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to comedy. And I'm really looking forward to talking to you guys about Thor. I did see it last night. If you haven't seen it yet, I do recommend see it big. Just see it big. It looks
See it big.
great. See it big.
So there you go. Speaking of, so that's the future. In the past, we've got a ton of movies. Maybe recently, maybe not so good ones, but nonetheless, you can check those out, whether it's Snowman or otherwise. But definitely in our full archives, we have plenty of movies. And we've been sort of talking about Coen brothers. We've been talking about Clooney. We've been talking about Damon. Whether it's Jason Bourne, whether it's The Great Wall, whether it's Monuments Men, or any one of those other types of movies, definitely check them out because we've got you covered. Mm-hmm. What's the most recent? We did. What's the one last year with the movie studio?
Hail Caesar.
That's it. We did
Hail
that
Caesar.
one.
We did Hail Caesar.
Yeah.
See? So we've got you covered. Anyway, thank you guys as always for joining us. Do leave a comment in the comments section. Let us know what you thought of the movie. Let us know what you thought of our opinions on the movie.
And I want to say thank you to many of the people that have been commenting. They've been very passionate and but not trolling. Well, but they haven't been trolling, and I appreciate that so much. I was in a good conversation last week about Matt Damon, in fact, and about The Great Wall, because we talked about The Snowman and how they didn't have any Nordic people outside of Rebecca Ferguson, who was really in the movie, and nobody complained about that. But we got into this really good conversation, and I want to thank that person. I want to thank for anybody who takes time to write us to talk about the movies and not be jerks.
Yeah. And you know what? Even if
they
you don't
disagree.
comment and you just listen and watch, hey, you know what? You've done your part
Thank
more
you.
than anything. So we appreciate you. If you do like us, don't hesitate to subscribe. And if you really love us, don't hesitate to tell your friends about us.
Yeah. I'm gonna go take my smart pills now. I'm trying to think, but nothing happens.
I'm gonna go watch Thor.
All right. Marisa, where can people find you?
Everyone can follow me on Twitter at Serafini TV.
And please support me on Twitter at DMovies1701. At DMovies1701.
There you go. And I'm at Phil Svitek, or go to philsvitek.com. Thank you guys as always. It has been an absolute pleasure. We've
Thanks,
got
all.
Thor coming up and whatnot, so definitely keep checking back in. We'll see you next time.
Bye, all.
Bye.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of its owners or principals.